Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my ReCore walkthrough. We're on mission 5, it's clear skies and whispers in the sand. I'm running through this cavern and avoiding some of these enemies that you can shoot for experience. Everything you shoot in this game that is alive, well, is it technically alive? I don't know, let's go all philosophical on this. Where's Isaac Asimov when you need him? You know, any enemies that you kill in this game and you engage will give you experience. The experience can vary depending on, you know, how powerful they are and so on and so forth. So it's a good investment to kill things, of course. It's also a good investment to explore in this game, because this game has some cardinal sins that it willfully introduces to the player. And did you see that little message just then? That's pretty much the only notification in this game that you get that it might be a good idea for you to perhaps pick up some of these rather important collectibles that just so happen to be gatekeeping the very end part of the game. And the game does a terrible job of conveying just how important these mechanics are. It also does a terrible job of really conveying to the player that these things are everywhere, they're just rather well hidden, and your map is interesting in that it's proximity based, so if you don't venture into an area, it will not tell you if there's anything worth venturing to, unless you get there, because it updates as you actively navigate it. And the message tells you to explore and it tells you to loot, but that's about it. It doesn't say, you'll play this game for 5 hours, get to the final area of the game, and then spend another 10 hours finding a bunch of arbitrary bullshit just to proceed. Which would have been nice if it would have said that, but I can appreciate why it didn't, because then it would be admitting its own faults. And I don't think that they're capable of doing so, because if they think this is the product that they deserve to ship, they are insane. They're really insane. What we're seeing at this moment is the first real open section of the game. Now that we've come out of the pylon, we're able to move past the shifting sand, and we're able to go to an area that we couldn't see before. And this is going to introduce you to the concept of every so often you're going to get certain functions and certain abilities that are a little bit better than what you have at the moment. And then when you come back, in good old Metroid style, you're going to be able to find certain areas and go certain places. And it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, considering the Metroid Prime team worked on this. And I haven't played too much of Metroid Prime, but I like to think that it had perhaps a more cohesive design than this game does. But I don't know, because I never got to the end of it, and I didn't know if you had to collect 1,000,000 Metroids to unlock the final boss. And if you do, I think it's just bad. And the biggest contrast I can give you is Wind Waker. Wind Waker is, I like to think, an underappreciated Zelda, because I think it's a fantastic game. But at the same time, it does commit some pretty bad sins. The first of them for me was the, fixing the sword. The arbitrary, oh god, you have to get so many parts of this sword to fix it instead of just finding the Master Sword. Because it immediately begs of padding and intentionally making something longer than it needed to be. But even then, I enjoyed it. It was still cool. And then you get to, of course, the Tingle section, where you have to do these fucking, tile puzzles and go across the world to collect, is it the Triforce that you were getting? You had to collect some arbitrary collectible at the end of the game at the 11th hour when all you wanted to do was find out how it ended. And it took a while too, because there was a lot of sailing, there was a lot of the dit and all that, the happy cheerful music. And Wind Waker's a great game, but even then, you felt like they slapped you in the face when you thought they were giving you a gift. And it kind of came out of nowhere, because up to that point it had been pretty predictable in its pacing. You did some dungeons, you did some exploration, you did a boss, you did some exploration, you did more dungeons, story happened. It was great. And then at the end it's like, oh, hang on a second, we need an extra 5 hours and we don't have anything to fill it with, so sail around finding these arbitrary things. And this game does the exact same thing. For no reason. And it comes out of nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. And the game just doesn't set it up at all. And then you realise that it's like a team running out of money and not having an answer, so instead they're just, here you go. And in the traditional days of Capcom and things, you usually got a level that was heavily reused assets, or you got a level that was just a boss rush of everything you'd faced so far in a row. And this is how they padded it back in the days when, they didn't quite have the budget or the technology or the time or whatever the reason was. And these became paradigms of gaming that went on to evolve and become different features, and everybody enjoyed them, some hated them, and, everyone's opinion was kind of divisive, but we understood why it was done. In Wind Waker, we were confused by why it was done, and in this game, there's not enough game here for it to be a thing. I don't think there would have been a problem if they'd have just let you go in and do the final area and do the final boss. You know there's areas that you could have gone to. There's a dungeon at the beginning of the game that needs 75 orbs, for God's sake. 75! So it tells you, if you want it, there's a shit ton this game has to offer. And the people who are going to want that stuff are going to find that stuff. They would not have minded if you'd have enabled them to beat the final boss in 5 hours. There are plenty of games you can beat in 5 hours that are great games that are still beloved to this day. But we're obsessed with length equating quality. You know, how long is it? How good is it? These two things are in direct correlation when it's not true. Some of the best games I've ever played can be beaten in under an hour. Doesn't mean that they're bad games, it means that there's some badass people playing them that have enabled it to be that streamlined. And that's what gamers do. We find paths of least resistance, and through skillful playing, practice and patience, we break your game. Don't break your game intentionally to add the fucking time. Like, that's the last thing anybody wants. And I was just about to say, I don't think I can think of anybody who realistically would defend what they've done with this game. Yeah, I know that there are people like that, because I went onto Metacritic, a website I never go to because I couldn't give a shit what other people think about games, personally, unless I'm going for a specific opinion. Like, I can't understand anybody that wants to listen to somebody else to judge a game. You judge a game yourself, you know, and if you can't afford it, that's different, or if you've got somebody that you really respect, that's different too. But for the most, I watch reviews after I've judged it, you know, so I can see what everybody else thinks. And the one place I never go is Metacritic, because anybody can comment on there. My mother could comment on there. I could pay her to comment on there, calling this game amazing. She's never played it. So you don't know the validity of anything on the internet, really, do you, when you think about it? So I took one glance, and the top one was 10 out of 10. I read about 2 lines and I stopped, because he said the graphics look solid. And I'm sorry, but if you're giving a game 10 out of 10, you cannot use the word solid in your review, unless it's Metal Gear Solid, and then of course it does deserve a very high grade. So, like, that dude probably thinks that there's something redeemable about essentially safeguarding the end of your game because you can get there in 4 hours. I don't look at it like 4 hours and I'm at the end of the game. I look at it like, well, there must be a ton of stuff that I didn't see, and I must have missed, and I'll go look for those things now. And there is. Lo and behold, there's a lot. But the loading times are so depressing, they'll put you off playing. And I'm pretty much done with this game. I need to give it a break, because I'm so mad at it. But it's dumbfounding how important those prismatic cores are, and the game never gets it across to the player. Not even on a fiction perspective do you realise just how important they are. All you know is that you found this orb, and then it's kind of a big deal because you don't know what it is. But it's a jiggy. It's a shine get, or whatever that stupid bad translation was. You know, it's a star in Mario. It's what it is. It's the core tenet of what you're playing for. Like, underneath the shooting and the questionable loading times and poor performance, this game is a platforming game. And there are moments where the platforming in this game shines, and it's beautiful, and it's nostalgic, and it's awesome, and it reminds you that these games are just as appealing now as they ever were, and because you don't see them that often, they're even more appealing. But that's juxtaposed with moments where you kind of go, do these people realise what they've done? Because I don't think that they do. And that's the biggest crime. The fact that they had something beautiful and they made it ugly. For no reason. You know? It's really strange. And I can't wait to delve into it as we see it, because there's so much to talk about, but I don't want to spoil it because you haven't witnessed some of it yet. But we just hit up a fast travel point over there. The fast travel point is this rather cheerful robot called Violet, who enables you to swap your crew members, and it enables you to travel around the game's world. I'm going to be doing some kind of dodgy jumping here to get on top of a rock. I don't think you're meant to without the spider, but I do it anyway, because can you remember how I mentioned that certain parts of geometry, if you hit them right, you'll climb them? You can use that to your advantage to get your jumps back, so like that, and then you can jump again and you're fine. All of this, I think, is intended, because a lot of the areas where you're not intended to go, they just kill you with radiation, and it's really bullshit. Because it's so fast, and then there you go, guys, 3-minute loading, because you fucking went up a mountain they didn't want you to see. They forgot to texture the back of that mountain, and you saw it, so there you go, a nice gift of death. Very strange. But a lot of it is designed around this mobility, and you'll notice there's a lovely signifier of when you're going to land on something, to help your depth perception. It's that circle that you can see, and for 99% of this game that circle will not fail you and it'll help. but every so often there are moments when it doesn't show up, and one of them is in the tower at the end of the game on plates that are rather finicky to jump between, because the platforming in the tower is the end of the game, and it's 5 floors of increasingly difficult platforming. And you've seen me do some jumping so far. You've seen me jump between stuff, you've seen me boost a little bit, you've seen me, hop and what have you, and do some parkour. Well, the platforming at the end of the game is kind of like, can you remember in Mario Sunshine where they took the backpack off you and shit got real? Well, they're like that. It's like comparing platforming in Goat Simulator to Super Mario, like Super Meat Boy, those Dark World levels that are super fucking hard. It's that kind of increase. It goes 0 to 60 out of nowhere, and immediately you're thrown into a game that, if it had all been like that, probably would have been a better game, because the platforming at the end of this game is awesome. And the combat at the end of this game is also awesome, minus the, you just got gangbanged because we all decided to bum you. But everything else, it's up and down. It's ridiculous. And I hope you join me for the rest of this as we watch it unfold together, and we go into a little bit more detail on exactly why that is. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.